Good evening, everyone, and welcome. My name is Chuck Roberts. I'm the Vice President of Operations for the Metro New York chapter of the National Black MBAs. And once again, welcome. This evening, we're offering our second session of Lift Every Voice, which ironically happens to be occurring during National Nutrition Month, which is March. And so for this night's session, or this evening's session, we're offering our tremendous moderator, Ms. Julie Walker from the Associated Press. And we have our special guest that we're celebrating this evening is our chef, J.J. Johnson of FIELDTRIPs here in Harlem. You'll enjoy the conversation. I'm sure you'll have lots of questions that you want to send in to us after the fact, and we'll get back to you. But more importantly, we know how important it is to make sure that we're keeping our brown and black talent in front of our audience and our membership. That being said, I'm not going to hold you up much longer. I do want to recognize Ms. Heather DePietro and her crew, as well as Marvin Vasquez and his marketing team. And I thank them, as always, for being here and supporting us and making all this happen. Without any further ado, I offer you Lift Every Voice with Julie Walker and Chef J.J. Johnson. Thank you.
Thank you, Chuck, and thank you, Chef JJ, for joining us and for letting us be here. I wish the viewers could be here with us because it smells absolutely amazing here at your restaurant, FIELDTRIP. Tell us what you're making.
Well, FIELDTRIP is a rice bowl shop. It's located in New York City. We have 3 locations, but we're located here in the heart of Harlem. This is our flagship. I believe that rice is the most unified ingredient in the world. Regardless where you go or who you're with, rice will always wind up on the table. So our slogan is Rice is Culture. FIELDTRIP, you can get any rice bowl kind of from around the world, and you can find something for you at a very affordable price.
And FIELDTRIP, such a great name. It brings back my childhood, and you know, everyone went on field trips when they were in school, even if it was just to the corner library. So where did you come up with that name?
Well, field is for the rice fields in the world, and trip is for the trips I've taken. I've been very fortunate to cook in Ghana, Singapore, India, Israel, and everywhere in those places I went, people would go crazy for rice. Like, nobody cared about the protein. Yes, the vegetables were there, and maybe they got a little excited, but when the rice came to the table, people would be looking over or sliding in or smelling that fragrance, which is really nice. So that's where FIELDTRIP came from.
So let's talk about your travels, but first let's talk about your cooking experience. You know, how does a boy growing up in Amityville, Long Island, learn to cook and become this, you know, world-traveled chef?
Yes, so I was born in Long Island. My grandfather sold his house when I was about 4 years old. And my mom, my aunt, and my grandparents moved to Pennsylvania. I grew up in Northeast Pennsylvania in the Poconos. My grandfather says that the amount of taxes he pays now is what he paid then, which is like crazy to even wrap my head around. But my house growing up was very vibrant. I was in the kitchen with my Puerto Rican grandmother and my 2 great aunts who were her sous chefs. My dad commuted back and forth to New York City to work. He's from Harlem. And their kitchen was a very vibrant, fun place. Like, I didn't watch cartoons as a kid. I was in the kitchen with them. And I would, you know, get on a milk crate, peel some carrots or onions, or I thought I was peeling carrots or onions. And when I look back, I realized that my grandma was injecting food DNA into my soul. And then my family kind of embraced my love for food. So I saw a commercial for Culinary Institute of America, where I wound up going to culinary school. But at the age of 7, I told my parents that's where I was going to go. My mom kind of chuckled and said, you know, black people have been cooking all their life. What are you talking about? And I kind of followed my dream or my hobby. I live for food. But, you know, my uncle was an owner of crab boats in Virginia, so we would eat crab cakes in the summertime or have crab cake battles. So my family really wrapped their arms around the love for food that I had and kind of pushed me to some limits to see if I was just really talking trash or if I was really going to do this. And I've been very fortunate to now be, the first business owner in my family, owning multiple restaurants, but also having a restaurant in a place where half of my family's rooted from, right? My dad is from Harlem. My grandparents came from the South. My other grandparents came from the South, from Mississippi, North Carolina on a bus, lived in Harlem, planted their roots here. And when I left culinary school, the first place that I lived was Harlem. So this is very second home to me. And who would ever think I would be cooking or owning a place in Harlem? Because when you think of food in New York City, you think of West Village or East Village or Tribeca. Or that's what they make you think. And then you realize that Harlem is the birthplace of so much.
So what was your trajectory after leaving culinary school?
After culinary school, I worked at a place called Tribeca Grill.
Very famous place.
Very famous place, yep, with Drew, and still very close with him.
Junior Point.
Yep. Then I went off and cooked at a restaurant called Jane on West Houston, which was very famous for their gnocchi, and they own the Smith now, which we all have probably eaten there. And I opened up the first Smith. And then I went to work at an Italian restaurant, Central Vinoteca. It closed. I worked at Morgan Stanley Executive Dining Room, where we changed the menu every day. It was like, I call it the secret kitchen. Most people don't realize there's these like luxurious places in financial buildings.
Some of our viewers might, because we are the Black MBA.
Yes, so that was a very, I got a very business acumen from that. People from Morgan Stanley still come and eat with me, or people I ran into in the elevator. And then I went on a cooking show called Rocco's Dinner Party because I was trying to find myself. I was trying to apply for jobs that people weren't giving me. And if you know me, I'm never going to stop. I'll just figure out how to push things out the way and keep on going or create it on my own. So I went on this show called Rocco's Dinner Party, and a gentleman named Alexander Smalls reached out to me and mentioned that he was going to open a restaurant in Harlem called the Cecil with Dick Parsons, ex-CEO of Time Warner and Citibank, and I wind up being the opening chef for the Cecil, which I call my claim to fame. Other people might say I have other claim to fame, but really was able to cook the food of the African diaspora, my influence from my travels in Ghana, and I think I was able to inspire some other people along the way to cook the food of who they are. After that, I left. I went out to raise some money for FIELDTRIP. I did some residencies and pop-ups, trying to hustle to get some investors, and then FIELDTRIP opened.
So that was going to be my next question. How did you budget to open your own restaurant? Because it's very important to understand the mind of an entrepreneur and how they, decide to open their own business, whether it's a restaurant or anything, and then how they raise the capital to do that.
It's hard. I'm not going to lie to you.
No doubt.
Unless you can convince your parents to take a second mortgage out on their home.
Is that what you did?
I tried to convince my parents, but they told me no. I tried to convince my grandfather, he told me no. You have to make somebody believe in something that is untangible, right? Kind of like I look back and read those Nike stories, like some kid walking up to you like, I'm gonna sell sneakers with this Nike check, and you're like, yeah, okay, right? That's how I felt like when I was going FIELDTRIP. Like, I'm gonna open a rice bowl shop, and I'm gonna open it in Harlem. People are like, what are you gonna do? That's not gonna work. I'll pass. Well, I've invested in Harlem before, it doesn't work. So you just keep chopping at the block. I probably convinced myself that I couldn't raise enough money, which was a bad thing to do in the journey in the beginning. So I raised very bare minimum to get FIELDTRIP open, and did it like very gritty, try to stay under budget, and had just enough money to survive for maybe 4 months as the doors were open. So like, I can pay rent, I can pay cost of goods, I can pay my staff, which is very minimal at the time. And I hope that this will last for a long time and your money will run very quick because something happens along the way that you didn't realize will happen. Here, what happened along the way was we installed a kitchen. We thought we had enough gas. Con Ed came out to turn our gas on and said, oh, you don't have enough gas here. You got to change your equipment. Or you have to get the building to put more gas in the building, which in New York City takes a year at least. So we had to purchase like $20,000 worth of new equipment that was like out of budget. So now you had 4 months in the bank. Now maybe you have 1 month, 2 months in the bank. So you really can't, you try to budget, but it's hard. And I tell people all the time is the most important part is really getting enough money to open a business. And when you are raising money or trying to start a business, think of yourself as a tech company. You want unlimited amount of funds so that you can be in business for 3 years if you made no money. But in the food world, that's very hard to do, to convince people to do. So yeah, luckily I knew that there would be people to walk in the door because I had family and friends, cousins, aunties that would walk in, and hopefully they would spread the word. But yeah, really a difficult thing to do, but doesn't mean you shouldn't do it.
Was there one piece of advice that you got that you thought was the most important that you'd like to pass on, or was there something that you learned along the way? I mean, I think what I'm taking away from one of the things you said is that you have to absolutely believe in yourself. You are the greatest cook in the world and your restaurant is going to be the most amazing, and that is why you should invest in me. And that is why, you know, you needed to raise even more capital. I mean, that's the thought process that should have been in your mind and out of your mouth at the time.
I think for me, I think everybody's in a different place when you are trying to become an entrepreneur or be a business owner. You just have to start. There's never a right time. Like I started FIELDTRIP, my wife was pregnant with twins. I had no job. I was like living on savings and doing pop-ups and endorsement deal. Like, you know, I was just living. I was just trying to figure it out. And so there's never a right time to start a business or to follow your dream. Mm-hmm. The first step is just trying to start. Then after that, you should figure out how much money you need, and then who can you get the money from. And you can get very creative of who you can get the money from. Maybe you're getting it from minority-owned banks. Maybe you're getting it from investors. Maybe you are getting it from a line of credit. There's many different ways to get it. It all depends on who you are and what your support system looks like.
And so where do you go from here? You know, you've got 3 restaurants. What's next?
For myself right now, I'm in a financial raise to grow FIELDTRIP to about 10 units, I call it. And the goal for me here is that FIELDTRIP isn't just a restaurant, it's a brand now. Right? FIELDTRIP is this brand that hopefully when you see FIELDTRIP, you know what it stands for, it represents, or it's disrupting a neighborhood somewhere that you wouldn't envision it to be in, right? So us being in Harlem is that we're disrupting the way people look at food, or we're giving them an option to eat food better, consciously better. If we're in Rockefeller Center, that's where one of our locations, we're disrupting because now there's a black-owned business in Rockefeller Center, right? We're disrupting it in a different way, but our price point allows working class New Yorkers to eat or tourists to eat in Rockefeller Center. If we're in Long Island City in a small food hall, you know, we're lending on employment of a community that maybe is getting pushed out. So FIELDTRIP comes in very different ways to maybe preserve a community or to make people look at that community a little bit different.
How are you surviving the pandemic? I mean, obviously people have to eat, and you know, they have been spending money on food, on takeout, and your restaurant this space is not huge, so that is one advantage. But how are you surviving this pandemic?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're one of the first people to sit down on the bench here in a long time.
And of course, we are 6 feet apart. We are socially distanced, and so we are being safe. We both were tested along with the entire crew here before we came in. And
Some of us are vaccinated.
yep, because we are in New York. We luckily have a strong vaccination program here, and restaurant workers and others on the front lines have been vaccinated. So,
You know, through the pandemic, you know, I had to let my staff, 90% of my staff go. I was the person opening, closing the gates. I was washing the dishes. I think it was myself, my manager, a cashier, and a prep person, and that was it. And we were here 6 days a week till the food ran out. Some days it was slow, some days it was busy. But what the main part of the pandemic did was, and my wife saved the business. She's a nurse. She came home one night and said, hey, I didn't eat anything. Did you bring any food home from field trip, or did you cook? It was 1:30 in the morning. I literally said, you left at 5:30 in the morning. What do you mean you didn't eat? She's like, yeah, we had no time to eat. We didn't even think about food. So the next day I decided to send her and her team some food. She works in a downtown hospital. But I said, well, what about hospitals in our community? Let me go to Twitter, ask some people, does anybody work in Harlem Hospital? And an old general manager that used to work with me at a restaurant said, my wife's in residency in ER. A young lady said, my aunt runs community affairs. And I got put in contact with these two individuals. And I said, hey, I want to send you guys 40 bowls. You know, field trip bowls. And they were like, oh my God, that would be amazing. Our team is like getting killed over here. So I literally took a Uber up the street to Harlem Hospital, dropped off about 80 bowls, went back on Twitter and said, hey, I think I did one of the best things in my life. I just dropped off some food at Harlem Hospital to frontline workers and nurses. People were like, I'll match you. Somebody called from Maryland, like, my wife just saw what you put on Twitter. We want to give you $2,500 to feed frontline workers.
wow.
So we had a staff of 3 people. We had to put a buy a bowl program in place at cost. And we started to feed frontline workers and nurses in Upper Manhattan and the Bronx through the whole pandemic. And then shifted and started to feed family and children in need, because we knew that was the next fall. So we partnered with Night Show, Boys and Girls Club. And we still feed individuals and families right now through a program with Rethink, because we know there's a need and restaurants can help fill that void. So that was our pivot. And if I always say, like, if I was big as like a Chipotle, I would have been giving out 1 burrito at a time, right? At every location I had. So I hope people look at Field Trip through, like, we'll be here through the darkest times and the brightest times. But that was our first step of being able to push through the pandemic. And what it allowed it to do was the community saw all this food going in and out, or somebody saying, oh, I got this from Field Trip. And so I'm like, Field Trip? I used to walk by that place. What do you mean they're feeding people? Let me go in there. And somebody would come in here and say, I got my last $20. I got to eat food with you guys because I heard what you were doing. Or Popeyes closed around the corner. I don't know where to eat food. I don't know where to eat. You have crispy chicken? I didn't know you had crispy chicken. I thought you guys were a vegan place, right? So the pandemic allowed a community that was kind of sheltering in place to learn more about their community. And what we did in 3 to 5 months would have taken us 3 to 5 years to do. And we've been busier ever since, and it's because of Harlem.
So let's pivot a bit and talk about your food. One of the things that struck me about you, and I know this is so old school, but you're trim, you're in shape, and you're a chef.
Yes.
So, and this is the new chef, you know, the way chefs are now, not the old way of thinking of your chef has to be.
Have a big belly?
Uh-huh, yep. And that speaks of your health conscious way also of preparing food. So let's talk a bit about that.
Well, I mean, for me, you know, I can eat all day long, but at one point, you know, I was in Singapore, I came back, I was like 190 pounds. My cholesterol was high. I had, it was, my doctor was like, what were you doing? And I was like, wow, I got to stop like eating this way. And then I started to work out and went that way. But when I look at like the African American diet of what we eat, it's legumes, it's rice, it's vegetables. It isn't fried chicken, it isn't fried fish. Those things are for like monumental moments, right? Those are celebration moments. So, but then when you look at our communities, what's in our community? Everything is finger licking good, everything is fried, salty, greasy, high sodium, or that's what the media tells us that we should be eating. So Field Trip for me was like, let me come into a community, let me disrupt the way people believe, or let me disrupt the media on how they believe we are eating food, or investors or developers or whoever, and show them that people want to eat a little bit different. Or just give people the opportunity to eat a little different. And that's what occurs here, right? Our rice is freshly milled, it comes from the farm. We have collard greens in the bowl, but we saute them slightly in a wok with some sweet potatoes and Brussels sprouts. You're getting steamed salmon. It's still delicious. It's just giving people a different moment to be able to eat better. We have black rice to help you with your diabetes. It's just giving people an opportunity to live longer, especially in our communities, black and brown communities. And that's where I envision Field Trip to be going across the country is, or in New York, just Washington Heights, the Bronx, right? Places where people don't have the opportunity to eat better. And that's what's happening here.
So black rice, you mentioned black rice helps with diabetes. Diabetes is high in the black and brown community, as is high blood pressure. Why is black rice something that's helpful? And can you mention some other foods that are helpful?
Black rice has vitamin B in it. Vitamin B can help you with your diabetes, or they say it does, right? But it has vitamin C. Black rice is more nutritious than brown rice, right? And we can get in a whole like crazy geeky rice conversation. But the one thing at Field Trip is none of our rice is enriched or bleached. That's really big. That's the rice that we buy in the supermarket, is enriched or bleached. So most of us want to eat brown rice because we've been told that's the good rice. And people come in here all the time like, do you have the good rice? I'm like, what rice are you talking about? And they're like, no, you have brown rice? Because I just want brown rice. But we have black rice. We have Carolina Gold. What's Carolina Gold? Well, it's the original white rice, So the rice, if you eat it the right way, if you get it freshly milled or, par frozen and it's not enriched or bleached, it has the natural vitamins in it to help you with your diabetes. So black rice has the vitamin B, vitamin C, vitamin E, all these vitamins inside of it, antioxidants to help you in your diet. And during the pandemic, a lot of people were coming in just asking for raw black rice. They want to cook it at home. Or can I just get a quart container of black rice? I have some vegetables in my house and I'm a diabetic and I just read or heard you talk about I should get black rice, but I can't find it in my local supermarket and I know you guys sell it. So, the goal here, the goal of Field Trip is that we're not like pushing healthiness on you or consciousness on you. We just do it because we know it's the right thing. We just try to buy the best product because we know it's the right thing.
And the other rice that you mentioned?
So we have, at Field Trip, we have six types of rice. We have sticky rice that comes from Laos, basmati rice from India, Carolina Gold rice, that's from South Carolina, brown rice, we call it Texas brown rice because our farmer's in Texas. We have China black rice because black rice origin is from China. That's 5. Am I missing something? And we do have an herb rice and we have a jollof rice that we flavor, but those are our 5 base rice, and all that rice comes from a specific area in the world, the origin, and we're using, if we want to call it, the heirloom or the granddaddy grandma grain, but it's coming directly from the farmer. The same way you get your vegetables at a farmer's market.
So you've done a lot of research with this. So you've gone back and looked at, you know, the healthy aspects of this, as well as, you know, just besides just the basic cooking.
Yeah, no, listen, the base of Field Trip is the rice grain. That's the star, right? So we are sourcing our rice from what we consider the best farmers that we can get the rice from. Farmers send me rice all the time. Farmers call me from all around the world all the time trying to get their rice on the menu. And the rice practices in New York are, the rice practice in New York, the rice practice in the country and the commodity level is really bad. Why I feel rice is very disrespected. So we're trying to change that culture.
So you've cooked rice for a lot of people. You've served a lot of rice dishes. Who is the one person that you haven't served yet that you want to?
Oh, wow.
And along with that, who has walked into your restaurant and surprised the heck out of you and you were like, wow?
So I'll start with who surprised us, who's been surprising us. So Whoopi Goldberg, she was taping a movie in Harlem. She would wait in the car outside, and she would send somebody inside, and she would say, "I want the sticky rice with the shrimp and barbecue sauce." And
Me too.
I'm like, who's ordering this combination? That's not a good combo, and that's not even on our menu. Like, well, they've had it before and they love it, and we finally figured out who was ordering. So it was Whoop, because one day she waved from the door, so which was great. Questlove has been by, which has been really amazing. He's been by here. He's been by our Rockefeller Center location since we're in his home now at 30 Rock. But I'm into feeding the mass. I'm so happy that the everyday person walks in. I want more people to walk into Field Trip and feel comfortable and eat here. I think there's something magical that happens at the Harlem location, is that you will get police officers, firefighters, the guys hanging out on the street, moms and nannies all in line, and then talking about, so what did you get? Did you get that black rice? Did you put salmon on top? This natural flow of conversation, or the barriers break down, that everybody's just a human being, which is the goal. But of course, I would love for President Barack Obama and Michelle Obama to come and eat here. I wrote to President Biden when he was running for president that he should come and hold a conversation right here in the heart of Harlem. I think a lot of people forget between 115th and 116th is a famous corridor that Malcolm X would hold his gatherings at. So that would make my life if I can get them to come and eat. And I think they would also appreciate Field Trip, just because we're on the conscious eating side that has flavor and culture, and is a place for everybody.
Okay, well, we'll see.
We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. You've got 4 more years, and then maybe another.
No, I don't think so.
Maybe another 4
I
after
think we're
that.
going to go another run. We're going to be all cringing.
You've gotten several awards, but one of the most prestigious is the James Beard.
Yes, I received the James Beard Award for my cookbook, Between Harlem and Heaven. We won in the American category. It was me, Alexander Smalls, Veronica Chambers. At the title of Afro-Asian American Cooking. So to be able to win a book in the American food category that represents the food of the African diaspora is very important to me, and impactful, and represents change or eye-opening for people. But yeah, I've been Forbes 30 Under 30. This year I was nominated as top 10 fast casual chains. Field Trip has won Best New Restaurant Esquire magazine. So yeah, I've won a lot of awards in my career, but the greatest one for me right now is just being able to cook every day and still have a restaurant open, especially in these hard times.
And another interesting thing about you is that you mentioned that you did that reality show.
Yes.
And is that what helped form your idea to do your own cooking show? Because you have your own cooking
yes.
show now.
I have a cooking show, Just Eats. It's on Clio TV, which is owned by TV One, which is very important to me because I call it for us, by us. So, and representation of black food on television is very small. But no, I think I did my reality show in like 2010, and my first season of my cooking show was 2018, I think. So I'm in season 3. It's great. I'll bring you on. We bring guests on to the show, so we'll have you on as a guest. You hang out with me, and we'll play I'll play the reverse role.
Okay, fair enough. And I'll get to eat.
And you get to eat and drink, yes.
And I'll get to learn how to cook like you.
100%.
Okay. But what about your cooking show? What is it that you like so much about it? I mean, I imagine you like sharing your expertise with your audience.
Yeah, I call it kitchen table talk. We bring on Just Eats. We have 1 or 2 guests on an episode. We talk about everything and anything, and the best conversations happen in the kitchen. You know, if you have guests over in your kitchen, somebody's trying to grab some food off of a cutting board, or pouring the glass of wine, and you're talking in the corner about something you don't want other people to know about. But something in the kitchen is just special, and that's what happens on Just Eats. And also, we are cooking cultural food. Nobody is watering it down. We're talking about real things going on. I think one of the most exciting guests I've had on the show is Sean King and his wife. We just got to learn about who he was as a person.
And if you were to go back at this point and talk to your 10 or 11-year-old self, what advice would you give to that person?
If I was to go back and talk to my 10 or 11-year-old self, I would probably tell my 10 or 11-year-old self, or any 10 or 11-year-old out there, to go, when you're able to cook or get your first job, go work at the best restaurant in your neighborhood. Whatever somebody's telling you is the best restaurant, that's where you want to go work. You're 10 hours or 20 hours a week, whatever you're allowed to go work at the best restaurant. I worked at a country club, wasn't the best restaurant, but if I did it again, I would definitely have went and worked in a hardcore restaurant. Still being a dishwasher as my first job, I think that's the best place to start. But just being able to hone skills, maybe a little bit better, really learn about food at a younger age. And just make sure you cook for everybody's meal. Even if everybody's birthday, you should cook for, just like I did. If you burn the lasagna, they still got to eat it.
They have to if they're hungry, I guess.
That was my first meal at 12 years old. I cooked for my aunt's birthday, 12 I cooked, and she said she wanted lasagna, and I burnt it in the oven. It was a disaster. I can still see it and remember it. But I think that's what makes me who I am, right? My family was allowing me to cook. Just like if I was shooting basketball hoops, my dad would have been rebounding basketballs with me outside.
Let me ask you another food question. I eat pork. You know, people call it the other white meat. I started eating it because it's an inexpensive meat. And
Affordable, right?
Affordable, I should say, affordable meat as opposed to inexpensive. In the summer, I found it at the grocery store. I threw it on the grill, and it was delicious. What are your thoughts on it? Because it can get a bad rap sometimes, but I love it.
I mean, I love pork. I eat pork. It's a cultural thing, depending on what culture you talk to. I respect that. But in the summertime, there's nothing like pork ribs, or pork tips, or some braised or slow roasted pork, or smoked pork. So
I just eat the plain old pork loin.
Pork loin? I love a pork chop.
Yeah, pork loin chop.
Yeah.
That's what I eat.
And you say you grill it?
Yeah.
I got to come over and get a piece of your grilled pork chop.
Nothing fancy. I'm not the cook like you, but I'm not the chef.
Yeah, no, we'll definitely at some of our locations be introducing pork on our menu as we grow. But right now at FIELDTRIP, we don't have any pork on our menu. But in the springtime, in the springtime for a special, we will be running pork.
And how are you suggesting
You cook it?
Yeah.
I think it's all about the cut that you get. So if you have a pork chop or pork chop loin, grilling is amazing, or roasting. If you have the pork butt or the pork shoulder, you should be slow roasting it or braising it in the oven. So every cut is different. I love marinating it in some orange zest, olive oil, salt, pepper, coriander, cumin seeds, that's my thing, but
Is that the kind of marinade that works for almost everything?
yeah, that's the kind of marinade that can work for everything. You get a little bit of zest and aromatics, a little olive oil for flavor.
And some vitamin C? Well, Chef JJ, we really appreciate you taking the time to talk with us today.
Well, no problem. Thank you for having me, and it's been fun.
We learned a lot about your cooking, about your restaurant, and everything in between. Turning the program over now to Andrew Hamilton, president of the New York chapter of the Black MBAs.
Good evening. My name is Andrew Hamilton. I welcome you live from Harlem, USA, at the greatest location right now at FIELDTRIP. I thank my host, Chef JJ Johnson, our moderator, Ms. Julie Walker, the leader in this event, Chuck Roberts, Heather and her staff here taping and filming, and Marvin that will actually broadcast us to our entire network. 2021 to many is a new beginning, a new start, a new pivot, whatever you make it out to be. I know the previous year was difficult. I know what it took to get through this year. But more importantly, you're here with us, Black MBA chapter, and we're here to serve and support our community. I'd like to thank my board, my community, my other chapter presidents, and more importantly, yourselves, the member, the community we serve. Thank you. Have a wonderful evening.